Hey there, and welcome to the Home Church YouTube channel. My name's Kenny, and I'm the lead pastor right here at Home Church, based out of Denver, North Carolina. We're excited that you chose to join us for today's message, and I believe that God is going to use today's word to challenge and encourage you in your walk with Jesus. But listen, wherever you're watching from all across this world, we invite you to join us by subscribing to this channel so that you get the freshest content that we produce every single week. But also, if you'd like to partner with this ministry, we'd invite you to do that as well. Visit our website at myhomechurch.cc/give to partner with us. We pray that God uses this message to challenge you today and to bless you as you hear the teaching of God's word. Well, good morning, y'all. My name's Kenny. I have the honor of being one of the pastors here at Home Church. I grew up around Carowinds. Anybody else grow up around a theme park? Anybody? Okay, 2 people, great. So I grew up right around Carowinds, and so I spent much of my childhood there riding rides, and I love roller coasters. Now, if you're from the area, you'll know that there used to be a roller coaster there at Carowinds called Thunder Road. All right, it was, you hear that? Yeah. That's the OGs. That's the Charlotte area OGs right there responding. Thunder Road was it was an old wooden coaster. It was huge. And in the early days, it was like a dueling coaster, right? And then they turned one backwards, and it was like a whole new ride again. It was unbelievable. But Thunder Road was known because it had all of these just absolute like ups and downs, all the way down, all the way back, just ups and downs. And it was awesome. And I actually loved it. And the first time I rode it, it was one of those things of like, okay, I got to do that again. And then I have kids now, and I have an 8-year-old and 6-year-old twins. And of course, guess where we go all the time? We go to Carowinds. And I've tried to introduce them to the experience of roller coasters because it's awesome. And now they're just now growing. They're just now getting to a place where they actually are able to ride and able to kind of experience it. And there's a ride there that I grew up when I was a little kid riding called Scooby-Doo. All right. Now, they don't call it Scooby-Doo anymore. That's fine. It will always be Scooby-Doo to me. And so this past summer, my kids got to ride Scooby-Doo for the very first time. And I was a little afraid, I'm not gonna lie, because that thing's old. And that thing's still a wooden coaster, and we're riding, and I'm like holding one of my kids, afraid they're about to fall out, and they got this look, and we pull into the station, and I remember one of my kids saying, "Dad, that was awesome. Can we do it again?" And I was like, "Yes, we can." After I eat some lunch. And so, but the thing is, and here's what struck me is, and of course, there are some of y'all who are crazy and unsaved who don't like roller coasters. I know, I get that. We'll pray for your salvation. It's fine. That's a joke, by the way. And I know there's some of you that don't enjoy it, but I think many of us do. And then the older I get, the crazier it gets. And, there's roller coasters going upside down and all that crazy stuff. It's awesome. I love it. But I was thinking about that because when I talk to people and I talk to them about their spiritual journey, and part of that is just their life, how things are going, specifically around the area of like their relationship with Jesus, their soul. We kind of call it our heart, right? People, when I'm talking to them about this, inevitably, you know what analogy they use to tell me about how things are going in their life? They tell me, man, it's just a roller coaster. And I'm thinking, it's that awesome? Right? Why is it that this thing that gives us such exhilaration when we're doing it for fun, in a different part of our life, actually leads us to a place of exhaustion? I've just thought about that idea of how much, really, I do enjoy roller coasters. And yet, when I think about life, and I know, and even as I look across the room, there are many of you, man, you're literally, I talked to a guy, literally on the way in, he's like, man, we're on the downswing. And it's like, okay, is that a good thing? Because it's accelerating, it's going fast, and that's good? Or do you feel like you're heading into a valley and it's not good? And there's this idea that many of us walk through of just our life. And specifically, I want to hone in today around like our journey with Jesus, that maybe riding a roller coaster has not been a great experience for you, and you're not really sure how you would define the health of your heart. Now, when we talk about our heart, really what we're talking about is our spirit, our soul. And so today we're going to kick off a new series, and we're going to go for the next 3 weeks, and I want to teach you 3 habits that will help lead you to having a healthy heart. So that's the name of the series, Habits of a Healthy Heart. And we want to teach you some disciplines, some rhythms that will help you lean into that and help you get your soul, your heart, into a healthy place. And so today, I want to start with one that I think is going to create a little bit of a response in you. And it's because I've been thinking about this all week. And so the first habit that we're going to lean into, I've got two more, not today, but over the next few weeks. So I want to invite you to come back. Because these things are not alone. They actually need to work together for habits and rhythms and disciplines for your heart to be healthy, for your soul to be healthy, so that you don't feel like you're constantly riding on that roller coaster of this journey. So the first habit that I want to talk to you today is about rest. It's about rest. How many of you in the room, if I were to ask you, do you need some more rest? How many of you would actually raise your hand? Yeah, and the whole church said, amen, right? I mean, because it's just a thing, right? It's a thing that so many of us are lacking rest. And, but I want to say this. So before it even starts coming out of your mind, even before you start to say it out of your mouth, I know all the excuses as to why you need more rest. I know, because I live some of them as well. So I went ahead and I started to put a list together just to see if we could compare and contrast notes over who needs rest and why. So some of the excuses I came up with, because tell me if this sounds familiar to you. You're a young parent and you got kids who don't sleep. Or if they do sleep, they're sleeping underneath you. Yep, okay. Others of you have demanding jobs that you feel constantly like you're under the form and the light of pressure and performance. And that even though you had the greatest month you've ever had last month, the expectation is that you have an even better month coming up this month. There are others of you who take it a step further where you have one job and it's fine, but just trying to provide more, you want to pay for that extra vacation, you actually pick up a second job. And you got no time for rest. Maybe this is your story. This is part of mine. Maybe you're just getting older, and the things you could do as a youngster, you can't quite do so well, and it takes you a little bit more time to recover after doing those things. Listen, I was playing dodgeball with my kids yesterday, and we did it for 30 minutes, and I'm pretty sure I need Tommy John surgery, okay? Man, that hurts, I can't recover like I used to. I need some rest. See if this connects to anybody. Maybe you are helping take care of an aging parent. And along with all the other things that you've got going on in your life, you're still trying to care for them as well. Or, how about this? Maybe you're an aging parent and you're actually taking care of some of your adult children who have had to move back in. There are others of you that you feel like you need rest and you don't get enough because you carry a high level of anxiety and you are weary from all of the worry that you walk with every day. There is a consistent pressure to perform that many of us walk with. And then, if I didn't catch you with any of those, I'll probably catch you with this. The countless amount of kid activities that you are running back and forth to stay involved in, and science fairs and gymnastics meets and, you name it. All the competitions and the tournaments and all that kind of stuff. All of a sudden, man, your whole life and your whole weekend just gone. There was a recent study done by Gallup, who does a lot of studies of people and their habits and their rhythms. And Gallup found that 57% of Americans say that they don't get enough sleep. And I was shocked that number wasn't higher. I think a lot of people lied. I think most people, honestly, don't get enough sleep. But here's the thing. It's not the lack of sleep that's causing us to feel this unhealth that we have in our heart. See, because a lot of times we connect the idea to rest is to sleep. And I can just go ahead and tell you, I got some people in my life that I love, and they sleep all the time, and they're still never rested. So it has nothing to do with your amount of sleep. It has everything to do with a truth that many of us have missed. And the truth is simply this. We are people who don't know when enough is enough. We are a people who do not know how to say no to all of the other things that draw us and grab our attention. We allow the heartbeat of performance and production to dictate our lives, and thus it dictates the health of our heart and our soul. And so because of this, there is actually a very direct correlation to your lack of rest and the unhealth of your heart. Today, I want to help tie those things together. I want to give you some rhythms to consider to help you work through this. The truth is, I think as you're sitting here, the room got very quiet and tense. Do y'all feel that? Like I do. I always feel that when I start to talk about things that are really touching a nerve. So I'll just let you sit in it for a minute. Here's when I know that the Holy Spirit has a word to teach to his people. It's because this is true of all of us. I think all of us have a part in this in us. And there's no denying it. The question is, you already know it, and today I'm going to teach to you about it. At the end of the day, the question is, what will you do about it? What will you do about it? Here's my concern for many of us. It shows up in Mark chapter 8. I'm going to be all over the scriptures today. If you can keep up, great. If not, it's going to be on the screen. The Home Church app has all of it. But the Gospels warn us of this. Jesus gives this warning in Mark chapter 8. He says this, what does it profit a man to win the world and lose his soul? This is the question that so many of us in America have to deal with, but we are always constantly trying to win the world. And sometimes it's trying to win the world of our own world, right? Trying to make more money, trying to provide for our families, all these different things. And then there are others who are even martyrs. You're trying to win the world for everybody else. Your heart bleeds for every animal and every person out there, and you spend all your time caring for everybody else. And all of a sudden, you've won the world, and yet when you look back at the process that you've walked and the destruction that you've left along that journey, you realize you've lost your soul. And that terrifies me for you. It terrifies me for me. But you see, the thing is, the answer to this enigma has actually been provided from you and to you since the very beginning. Join me in Genesis chapter 1. I want you to see something here. As you're getting there, quick context, Genesis 1, Moses is writing what had been orally passed down, and he's giving us a description of the beginning of marked time. And you know much of this story. You know how God goes through 6 days of creating the sun and the moon and the stars and the water and the fish and the birds and all these different things. And he goes through this, and then here's kind of how this starts to culminate at the end of chapter 1 and going into verse 2. It says this at Genesis 1, starting in verse 31. It says, God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. And then, yeah, go ahead, flip your page. I heard that, good. Genesis 2, verse 1. Thus, the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy because on it he rested from all of the work of creating that he had done. You see, the answer to our rest problem has actually already been provided. It's just many of us either missed it or willfully forego it. There's a few things just a couple of quick, powerful thoughts that I have that I want to share from you from this. And it's this, and if you're taking notes, you can grab these. These aren't going to be on the screen. The first thing is this, is that God didn't need rest. Think about that. The Bible said that he rested from all of his work, but the thing is, he's an infinite God. He's an all-powerful God. God actually did not need rest. He chose it. Think about that. So what does that mean for you and for me and you who actually do need rest and yet we don't choose it? The second thing that sticks out to me is God blessed it and he called it holy, this day of rest. The idea of holy and blessed means to set apart, to consecrate. And so God sets apart this seventh day. He sets it apart, he consecrates it, he makes it holy. And yet we just plow right through. The third thing that I saw is that God actually sets an example for us and his people over what our days are supposed to look like. See, because we get into what I call the lullaby effect. We just read the Bible, but we don't actually read the Bible. Most times people miss this. But if I went back and I read it, here's what it says. It says, God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. There was evening and there was morning the sixth day. Let me ask you a question. How does your day go? Does your day go evening and then morning? No. That's not how we live our lives, is it? We wake up in the morning, and what do? Most of you go to work. Unless you're blessed and you're retired, and God bless you. I can't wait to get there one day. But see, God actually set an example over even how our days are supposed to look, and we missed it. Because he says there was evening and there was morning, then the next day. See, if you understand a little bit of your Jewish background, you understand that their day actually started in the evening. And I don't know about you, but in the evening, the thing that I do is rest. Well, kinda. Well, my kids will let me, right? And so the way that God institutes and creates the days is evening first, because in the evening, that's when we take our rest. And then the morning, and then from our rest, then we wake up and we go to work. And so people might say, well, but pastor, right there, even in the Bible, it says God rested from his work. You're totally right. And that's because we don't have an understanding that our God is not measured by time. See, most of us think that, in the beginning, that's when everything starts. But you have to understand that you have an omnipresent God who has no beginning and he has no end. And even though the earth had a beginning moment, our God has no beginning. He has always existed. And so I want to declare to you today that yes, our God took a rest from working, but he got a chance to do that work out of rest from eternity before creation. And I just wonder for me and you, how many times do we go about our day and our week and we go and we work, and then we finally get to a weekend, and if you actually get any rest, you're actually resting from the work as opposed to working from the rest. Friend, if you can grab hold of this concept and start to shift your heart and your mind to understand that you're out of order, and the answer to all of your unhealthy habits start right here with learning how to rest, everything starts to shift. And I know you might be thinking, man, is it that big a deal? Really? Is it that big a deal? I believe it is. I want to show you in the last few minutes that I have with you today how important rest and the idea of Sabbath is, not only to your life, but to our God who created it. Our God takes Sabbath seriously. Many of you may not know this, but he actually, among the law that he gave Moses for the people, among the law, he actually gave them a part of that, which was to recognize the Sabbath and to keep it holy, like he said from the very beginning. See, this isn't new news. This is something that he's always said is important to him. And then he put it in the law. I want you to see this in Numbers chapter 15. It says this: while the Israelites were in the wilderness, God takes the Sabbath seriously. Watch this. While the Israelites were in the wilderness, a man found gathering wood on the Sabbath day. Those who found him gathering wood brought him to Moses and Aaron and the whole assembly, and they kept him in custody. Wait, what? They arrested him? because it was not clear what should be done to him. The Lord said to Moses, I want you to get this. This isn't just my idea. Well, that pastor's crazy. The Lord said to Moses, the man must die. The whole assembly must stone him outside of the camp. So the assembly took him outside the camp and stoned him to death as the Lord commanded Moses. Anybody else have your eyes open to like, wait, what? I tried to tell you the Lord takes the Sabbath seriously. You didn't believe me. So I had to show you in his word that he literally told the people to kill a man because he was gathering sticks on the Sabbath. Now, as we read that, that sounds a little trivial, right? If we're just in our own, like, we're like, man, whoa, the guy was just gathering some sticks on the Sabbath, like that deserves death? How does something as simple as picking up sticks on the Sabbath lead to death? It's the same way that all the overtime work that you have seems like a simple thing because you're just making a little bit of money, but in the end, it turned into you're never home. It's the same way that having your kids in all kinds of different activities all at one time seems like the right thing to do because we're keeping them active. We want them to have friends and to be athletic and all that kind of stuff. And then in the end, all you ever do is find yourself at a sports field or a ball field or a competition. The same way that packing your weekends with all the stuff that you didn't have to do because your entire week was spent working and overworking and working a second job. See, all these things seem fine. All these things seem simple. All these things seem like no big deal. It's good. It's fine. I mean, you know, when my kids go to their grandpa's house, he's out there making them pick up sticks, right? And this is the problem. It's because it feels like such a little thing. It's not a big thing. And yet the little thing turned into something significant. How does a man going out to pick up sticks turn into a death-worthy sentence? It's because we don't understand the foresight that God had, that on the seventh day he rested and he made it holy. Because while God was creating, again, God has no beginning and has no end. He understood from the foundation of the earth that coming along a little bit, it would turn from picking up sticks to making bricks. And what would seem like just a little thing to not honor the Sabbath, to not keep it holy, just to pick up a stick, that one day down the road, these people, God's people, would be slaves to Pharaoh, and he would say, work, work, work. And they would make brick after brick after brick. And he knew that at some point, if they didn't have in their heart the Sabbath and to hold it and to keep it holy and to understand how vital it was to their soul, that when they got into the work field and they got into slavery and all they did was produce, that they would miss God's glory, they would miss his presence because they wouldn't see it and experience it because all they did was work and produce. No wonder you feel dead. There's a death sentence over us when we neglect the Sabbath, when we neglect rest, because God made it holy and he separated it and he calls us to keep it. And so many of us, me included, do not rest. No wonder we feel like we're dying. See, friends, the reality is, you're going to die one way or the other. See, here's what's going to happen. You're either going to die to yourself and trust God at his word, to rest in him, rely on him, and you're going to give up your life to him. Or you're going to die doing all the things that everybody else tells you you're supposed to be doing. One is going to be a death that leads to life. That's what Jesus says. He says that if you lay down your life, you will gain it. For those who refuse to lose their life, they will lose it. You will either do that, or you will choose to live your own life, and you will be a martyr to the way of life and to satisfying everyone else, and it will be a slow death. And at the end of your days, you will lay on a deathbed and you will live in regret for the way that you handled this. There was a study of nursing homes where these nursing home nurses shared that over and over and over again, the primary regret that they hear on deathbeds in a nursing home was that people neglected their lives to do what they thought someone else wanted them to do, whether it be work or whether it be something else. We got people on the far spectrum ends here in this room. We got some newborn babies in the back, and we got some folks who are long in the tooth. And let me just lovingly say this. Whenever you and I lie on that same deathbed, I pray that the Holy Spirit of God will use today to shift something in our hearts, that won't be our greatest regret. That our greatest regret would be that somebody didn't preach this to us sooner. And that we didn't make a decision to change our life sooner. You know, it's a lot like generosity, honestly. See, this is why people struggle with generosity. It's the same concept. You see, because we think that we have 7 days, and if I give one back to God to rest, how am I going to handle all of the things that I would do in 7 days only in 6 days? This is the same thing with generosity. Many of us refuse to give back to God what he's already put in our hands, a percentage, because we don't know how to steward the 100. How in the world are we going to take the 10, give it away, and trust him to bless the 90? It's the same concept. And they both work the same way. When you trust God to keep the Sabbath and to rest, he makes the 6 days that you do work more fruitful. And in the same way in generosity, when you trust God to give back to him first, he takes the 90% and he blesses it and he makes it more fruitful, and he does way more with it than many of us do with the 100. The math doesn't seem right. To take a day off and yet we're more productive, but this is the way of God. God is asking us to trust him that he is enough. That he's enough. So, does God take the Sabbath seriously? He does. But he actually takes it even more seriously than I think you understand, even from what I've already taught you. There's one more thing that this week, as I was studying this, that God showed me that blew my mind. And I want to wrap up with this today. And I want to show you just how seriously God takes this idea of Sabbath rest. And it's not just for you. Look at this in Leviticus. Leviticus chapter 25. Again, the Lord is meeting with Moses, giving him the law. Watch what he says in verse 25. Chapter 25, starting in verse 1. The Lord said to Moses at Mount Sinai, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land I am going to give you, the land itself must observe a Sabbath to the Lord." Wait, what? The land itself must observe a Sabbath as well? For 6 years sow your fields, and for 6 years prune your vineyards and gather their crops. But in the 7th year, the land is to have a year of Sabbath rest, a Sabbath to the Lord. Do not sow your fields or prune your vineyards. Do not reap what grows of itself, or harvest the grapes of your untended vines. The land is to have a year of rest. Whatever the land yields during the Sabbath year will be food for you, for yourself, your male and female servants, and the hired worker and the temporary resident who live among you, as well as for your livestock and the wild animals in the land. Whatever the land produces may be eaten. God saw Sabbath rest in such heavy weight that he rested himself. He set an example. He set it apart. He made it holy. He instituted it as a law for his people to the point of punishment of death for those who refuse to trust him and obey it. He saw Sabbath and rest so highly that he even created it as a law for the land, and the principle remains that even in the year of rest, the Bible said that the land would produce fruit that you would still eat off of. But it goes even further than that. You know that coffee cup verse? We talk about it often. We like to make fun of coffee cup verses around here. But Jeremiah 29:11, you guys know that one, right? How many of you have that coffee cup? For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Right? Y'all know that one, right? Let me show it to you in context. It's going to blow your mind. This blew my mind this week. I literally did laps around my office a few times. Staff came in, they're like, "You're all right?" I'm like, "The Lord's wild. This is wild." Jeremiah, who's known as the weeping prophet, constantly would give warnings to the nation of Israel. One of the warnings that he gave to the nation was around the Sabbath. And ultimately, he warned them that if you continue down this path, there's going to be punishment. The punishment was then for the nation of Israel to be taken down by the Babylonian Empire. They were then put into exile. The whole nation had to suffer. And Jeremiah 29 tells us a little bit about that time frame. How long? Starts in verse 10, 29 and 10. This is what the Lord says. When 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will come to you and fulfill my good promise to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. Then you will call on me and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I have banished you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back to the place from which I carried you into exile. 70 years that they would have to suffer in exile. Why? Why? What did the nation of Israel do that God would allow them to be not only plundered, but taken into exile, and for 70 years? Look at 2 Chronicles. Chronicles is a book of history, looking back over the history of Israel. And 2 Chronicles says this in chapter 36, starting in verse 20. He carried into exile to Babylon the remnant, the leftover people, who escaped from the sword, and they became servants to him and his successors until the kingdom of Persia came to power. Chronicles is telling us about the nation of Israel going into exile. Watch this. Verse 21. The land enjoyed its Sabbath rests, and all the time of its desolation it rested until the 70 years were completed in fulfillment of the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah. Is anybody else seeing this? Scholars point out that there were 70 years of exile that the nation of Israel had to suffer through. And it was in direct proportion to the amount of years that they skipped the Sabbath rest for the land. If you don't think our God takes rest seriously, you have seriously misunderstood why you feel like you're dying. The reason your soul feels so unhealthy is because we don't trust God at his word. We've not been obedient to keep rest in God. You see, the Sabbath isn't just about rest. The Sabbath is about learning to trust God that what he has and who he is enough for us. And that's many of our primary problems. Whatever he gives us just simply still isn't enough for us. And that's why our soul is so unhealthy. Learning to trust that God would take the 6 days of work and make it fruitful enough for 7. It's an act of trust. Learning to trust God with the 10%, first and foremost, that he would be fruitful with the 90, the same principle remains. Our God takes the Sabbath seriously. He set the example. He called it holy. He made it a law. He made it punishable by death for those who didn't follow it. He furthered that by giving rest to the land. He made that a law as well. When they didn't follow that, he punished them for 70 years to make it right. And for me and you, if we're going to continue to neglect rest, we will continue to experience death. No wonder we feel like there's no fruit in our life. There's no rest. What does it look like? Here's what it looks like. Back to Leviticus. Leviticus 25 and verse 18. This is back to the law. And God tells you what it looks like when you observe the Sabbath. Follow my decrees and be careful to obey my laws, and you will live safely in the land. Then the land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill, and you will live there safely. And then God even responds to the excuse that many of us have. Watch what he says. You may ask, what will we eat in the 7th year if we do not plant or harvest our crops? And God said to his people, and I came to declare to you today, I will send you such a blessing in the 6th year, in the Sabbath, in the time of rest, that the land will yield enough for 3 years. I declare to you today that, friends, if you will trust God and you will actually learn how to rest, that you will hold to the Sabbath, that you will step in and trust him at his word and believe that what he'll give you is enough. Not only will he provide for you in the day of not working and in the year of not working the land, he will provide multiple years and days of blessing far beyond you could ask or imagine if you would just learn to trust him. He's a God of overflow. He's a God of provision. He's a God of enough. But you and I take it in our own hands and we want to provide enough for ourselves. You will never, ever be able to provide enough for yourself. He is the prize. He is the only one who can give you the provision you need. He's the only one who can satisfy your soul. You've been looking for it in so many places, in money and in sex and in all the things of the earth. But I came to declare to you today, friends, that if you love him and you trust him and you believe in him, that he is the only thing that can and will ever satisfy you fully. I want to make this very practical. Practically, what does this look like? I want to be very clear. With Jesus, the requirement of the Sabbath has gone away. Okay? Let me just be very clear. You're not required to keep a Sabbath. But the principle still remains. Why would we not trust God at his word and live in his principles? Paul tells us that Jesus came to provide us rest, and that the Sabbath was a shadow of Jesus. When we learn to trust the work that God did, it will be enough. Let me bring this back. When you learn to trust the work that Jesus did on the cross to pay the price for your sin, to offer you forgiveness, to then die a physical death, to be buried, and then his work continued as he raised himself from the dead. He walked the earth for 40 more days. He ascended into heaven. Right now, he waits at the right hand of God the Father to come back and to receive those who trust and believe in him. When you learn to trust in Jesus' work, you learn to trust in the work of God fully in your life. There will be blessing. and you will experience not just a day, not just a year, not even 3 years. You will experience an eternity of blessing in the presence of the one who created it all. So practically, this actually has to come from a desire to want to be healthy, not a requirement that God put on you. I want you to see the weight and the importance that God has for the Sabbath and for rest, that you might then desire it for yourself, to be healthy in your spirit. And so the first habit of a healthy heart is to learn how to rest. So very practically, I want to ask you some questions. As I've been preaching the word of God to you today and the Spirit of God is moving, I wonder, what areas has he impressed on your life where you know, because the Spirit of God is stirring in you, that you know you don't trust him? That whatever he's given you in your heart of hearts, you've considered it not enough. What is that? Is it the amount of money you make? Is it the amount of children you have? Is it the amount of assets and wealth? Is it the amount of influence? What is it in your life that you don't trust God that you've been given enough? Remember, I said earlier that this principle's been there since the very beginning. The question is, what will you do with it? This has been something that Katie and I have been practically wrestling with. How do we fight for this? How do we say no to things? And there's a principle that we try to live by that I want to give to you as well. And it's this idea that many of us in life, we don't say no to many bad things. We don't have to. Many of us are saying yes to lots of good things. But the problem is that when we always say yes to good, we leave no room to say yes to great. So for some of you, you're actually going to have to learn how to say no to really good things in your life, to leave room and space and time to say yes to the great things God has for you. For some of you, you're going to have to take control back of your life. And that means saying no to all of the things your children want you to do for them. Someone is going to have to grow a little spine and put some parameters around the way that you work and what you say yes to at the place who provides your income. Because let me just lovingly say this to you. What good does it profit you to win the world and lose your soul? Thank you for taking the time to enjoy this message from Home Church. We hope that God used today's message to encourage you and to challenge you as you heard the teaching of his word. Listen, if there's anything in today's message that spoke to you, or if you asked Jesus into your life today, let us know. We would love to celebrate with you. Simply send us an email at hello@myhomechurch.cc and let us know that you made that decision today. Also, if today's message impacted your life, you can take a step forward and a step into supporting the ministry of Home Church by giving online right now at myhomechurch.cc. Again, thank you for watching today's message. Make sure you like and subscribe so that you get all of the fresh content from Home Church.